Hi, I'm Randall from Randall's ESL Cyber Listening Lab, providing tips on language learning, culture, and human development. And what I'd like to begin by asking you teachers out there a couple of questions to see if these feelings resonate with you. First of all, has there ever been a time in your teaching career where you felt, as a teacher, disconnected from your colleagues or students, unprepared or unfulfilled in any way because you've had few opportunities to engage in meaningful conversation and development with other teachers? Or have these feelings ever impacted the way in which you have connected with your students or taught in the classroom? And I think, unfortunately, this has been true of today's educational climate, in which COVID-19 has really fractured the way in which we have engaged with others, our teaching, our connection, and so forth. And I have found that many teachers around the world have been struggling to stay connected, to stay in the profession, to stay feeling that they are making a meaningful impact with people around the world. Well, in today's episode, I will be interviewing Jorge Torres Almazan on his journey into teaching. And again, Jorge is from Mexico. His experiences over the past 20 years as a language teacher, and the small steps, along with so many other people, to really engage and create a vibrant language teaching community. And we'll also talk about his involvement in the language teaching profession and MEXTESOL there in Mexico. So let's just go ahead and bring on our guest to our broadcast. Good morning, Jorge.
Hi, Randall. How are you?
It's
Thank
great
you
to
for
have
having
you
me.
with us today.
Thank
Let's
you.
just, before we jump into the broadcast, just looking at some other good morning. We have Pierre. I hope one day I'll take part in one of your broadcasts. I'm a huge fan. Thanks a million for your great work for teachers of English around the world. Again, thank you. And certainly, just like you, Jorge, we would encourage anyone to be engaged. And I think that's what we're talking about today, Jorge, is getting and being engaged. We have someone from Bangladesh. Welcome. Again, we have different people. Amy says, I don't know how to be a part of your broadcast. I really want to be a part. Absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit about that in conjunction with our broadcast of how people can be involved. So let's just go ahead and get right into this, Jorge, just telling people a little bit about what we're going to be talking today. We're going to be talking about building a thriving teaching community. We're going to have you introduce yourself. We're going to talk about your country. And again, that could take hours to do because Mexico is a large country. We'll talk a little bit about your decision to becoming a language teacher. And then we'll talk a little bit about the language education system. And we'll continue from there. So let's go ahead, Jorge, just get right into this with a little bit about yourself and your family. If you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Randall. Well, Randall has already said enough about me. I am from Tampico, Mexico. And this is my family. My wife is now my colleague because she graduated. He got her BA like 4 years ago. She teaches in an elementary school, a private school. My daughter, her name is Hania. She just graduated like 2 years ago, more or less, high school. And my son, Jorge Jr., he is now in middle school. So this is my family. As I told you, I am from Tampico, Mexico. It's a city in the northeast part of Mexico.
And let's go ahead and jump right into that. A little bit about the land, the culture, and the people. A little bit about your part of Mexico.
Yes, Randall. Well, this is what you see when you arrive to Tampico's airport. This very nice image with the palm trees, which means that Tampico is a very warm, hot city. And the other picture is two of the most historical, I may say, buildings in the city. They have been there for more than 100 years, more or less. Many people go there just, like a tourist to see these nice buildings, which are, I guess, French style. I don't know that much about architecture, but they are beautiful buildings in the Tampico's downtown. These other two pictures are, one of them is the cathedral, well, part of the cathedral in front of the main square in Tampico. And the other one is a very popular place called the Carpintero Lagoon. Many families go there. Well, not right now, but they used to go on Sundays, weekends, just to spend some time with family and to see the lagoon. And this is one of the main attractions in Tampico, in our region, the beach. This is the Miramar Beach. It's a beautiful beach. It's a clean beach. So you're welcome to visit Tampico whenever you want to enjoy the beach.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Jorge. It's certainly a pleasure. And if you could say one thing you would like people to know about the Mexican people, what would you say?
I'll say that Mexican people are really warm and welcoming. All visitors are welcome. When you come to Mexico, Mexican people offer whatever they have in their house. I mean, we are always happy to receive visitors. We are very proud of being a family, I mean, close family always. So family for us is really important. And also friends, of course. Friends are part of family.
Okay, well, great. And again, some other comments coming. Greetings from Chicago. Amy says, my online ESL students love to use your lab. Certainly, we're talking about creating materials. We're talking about creating community today. And certainly throughout this broadcast, we would like to hear from students or teachers of what have been some of the keys to remain connected to your colleagues, to develop professionally. So let's go ahead as we get into this. Let's talk a little bit about your decision to become a language teacher. Everyone has a story.
Yes.
And let's go ahead and hear your story. And feel free, any of you that are out there, share a little bit about how you became a language teacher as well.
Well, let me tell you, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of strange story. I remember many years ago when I was in the US in an ESL community. I was taking ESL classes in a community college. I met a teacher. His name is Paul Weaver, and in one of his classes, he was asking us the question about what we wanted to be in the future, and he asked me, but I didn't know what to say. I don't know. I want to work in a place where I can see people, and he said, like what? I said, maybe a hospital. And he said, you want to be a doctor, a physician? I said, no, a school. You want to be a teacher? I said, no, I don't want to be a teacher. I just want to see people. And well, that was my conversation with my teacher a long time ago. Years later, when I came back to Tampico, I was just looking for a job. And I read this post in a newspaper. They were looking for, bilingual people, a teacher. No experience was required, so I decided to apply. So I went there, they hired me, and like after 6 months being there, I said, this is what I want to be. I want to be a teacher. So here I am, 20 years later.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of resonating with a lot of people. The idea of right from the beginning, you said that you wanted to connect with other people.
Yes,
and that
that's what I
idea
said.
of human connection, I think, is so vital to who we are and what we do. For those that are watching right now, let's go ahead and briefly talk a little bit about the language education system. I know that there are private schools, public schools, so many different types of educational opportunities. But if you could briefly describe a little bit about language learning in private public schools, whether people study English, French, German, just so that everyone has some context to the country there in Mexico.
Well, in Mexico, in public schools, they teach English only, in elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. And they started teaching English back in 2000, more or less, in elementary schools. In middle schools, they have been teaching English for, I don't know, maybe more than 4 years, and also in high school. In the private schools, it's a little bit different. Sometimes they have English and French, or English and German. Some even have English and Italian, or in a very few ones, Chinese, because that's, like the fashion now. So yes, there is a difference. In public schools, we have a bunch of students. They have only 45 minutes per class in English class. In private schools, they may have 3 or 4 hours per day. So there is a big difference in this regarding. But public schools are doing an effort. I know many teachers from public schools, and they are doing an excellent job in those public schools, especially elementary schools.
And this will probably lead into what we're talking about right now is the challenges facing classroom teachers. First of all, we're talking pre-pandemic, keeping in mind pre-pandemic situations of challenges. I think this will resonate with many teachers out there. And we do have a comment from Mona. Mona says, yes, today's educational system seems chaotic in some parts of the world. School closures even now, and then followed by syllabus adjustments and a change in assessment system that makes it harder for teachers to connect with colleagues and students. So I think Mona might be referring to not only now in the pandemic, but even before. Certainly those have had some great impact.
That's happening in Indonesia, but it also happens in Mexico. Every 6 years when we have a new president, a new authorities, they change something in the public education, and then teachers have to start all over again.
And so let's lead this into the idea of facing challenges facing classroom teachers. The title of our broadcast, of course, is Building a Thriving Teaching Community of Support where teachers can feel a place. Let's talk about, again, going back to some of the challenges that you faced 20 years ago, which still would be very relevant to many places around the world. And we'll encourage the audience to share some of the challenges that they've faced as a language teacher. First of all, pre-pandemic, but also even now.
Well, I guess pre-pandemic, or 20 years ago, we have similar situations. The number of students in classrooms, for example, in public schools, that's one of them. The other one is the lack of resources. Many teachers need to invest their own money to get some materials for their students, like photocopies or any other kind of realia they want to bring into the classroom, especially in public schools.
And let's hold that idea, thinking about large classes, and we want to hear from the audience, those that are watching. What is a large class like in your country? Are we talking 20, 30, 40, 60, 100? Is it different from public schools to private schools? What is it like in Mexico? And we'll invite the viewers to share their numbers as well. So Jorge.
Well, in Mexico, I guess you can find classrooms with 40, 50 students in public schools. In private schools, you can find classrooms with 30 students, 20 students, and even 15 students. So as I told you, there is a big difference. But again, I'm sure our colleagues, the teachers in these public schools are doing a great job. I know many of them, and I know they are really excellent teachers.
And let me ask you, just to give some perspective, if a teacher has maybe 40 students in a class, how many classes would this teacher have a week? Any idea what might be an average?
I don't exactly know how many classes, but I know a teacher, and he told me he has 300 students. So just imagine how many.
I'm smiling, but that is not a smiling matter. I mean, that's really difficult, especially if the school says, we want you to assess their speaking skills. Well, how do you do that with 300 students?
Exactly. How do you do that? 300 students. Andres is the teacher. That's his name.
All right. And let's look at some other comments. Oh, we have some comments coming in. Let's see here. Mona says, is it all face-to-face education now? Mona is from Tunisia. What does it look like right now? And we're going to be talking more about this, Mona, in a few minutes about the impact of the pandemic in Mexico. But for right now, what is it like in Mexico? In terms of, Jorge, in terms of, Mona's asking, is all education face-to-face now in Mexico?
Well, right now we are having the online classes, distance learning. They used to be face-to-face most of the time, 99%.
Yeah, and who knows what this is going to look like 2 months from now, 6 months from now, and so forth. Yeah. Victor says 45 students in one of his classes. Okay, well, and Victor, please share how many classes from your experience do teachers have? Also, Amy says, Randall, thank you for mentioning me in the broadcast. Absolutely. People want to be recognized and acknowledged. Thank you for your online learning materials that you've been sharing for free to so many teachers around the world, even during the pandemic. Thank you for sharing that. Well, we've talked about large classes. We talked about free resources. Let's talk about the next one, about online training. Or when you first started, what was professional development like? And then we're going to talk more about what teachers can do today to increase their connection with others. So talk a little bit about what it was like when you first started teaching.
More than 20 years ago, well, here in Tampico, we had some occasional presentations. The publishers, they will come to our city and they will gather some teachers to train them in how to use their material. That's what I remember, and that's more or less what we had in that time. Of course, there were some other events for teachers in bigger cities, not in our city. Online training, no, I guess there was none in that time, 20 years ago, or maybe one or two training courses somewhere, but not available to everyone. So now things have changed. We have a lot of training opportunities online in this moment, right? Because I remember even last year, we had a lot fewer.
And then let's talk just a little bit, as you were mentioning right from the beginning, when you were starting to teach, what was your first teaching assignment job like? And what did you do specifically to help one another, to help other teachers?
Well, I remember I started in this small private school. They had their own methodology. So that's what we had to follow. I mean, it was only what they had in there, their book, their program, everything. It was theirs, right? So we were not allowed to do anything differently. So it was comfortable. It was only 6 students per class. So it was no problem. But I wanted to try something a little bit different. So I decided to ask the principal for authorization to have some kind of training, I may say. I am not a teacher trainer, but I decided that it was a good idea to get together and share experiences. And my colleagues were a little bit shy, so I decided to start. And I said, well, I'm going to prepare this presentation for you. I'm going to ask them to stay a little bit later on the weekend, and let's have the presentation. And that's the way we started in that school. Well, I started in that school.
And I think one of the challenges you just mentioned is that many educational systems, perhaps countries, perhaps school districts, teachers do not select the materials. It's like dictated from the top down. Whatever you've been given, you have to make do. So certainly that's one of the challenges. And I want to ask and throw this question out to others as well. What can you do if you're working in a small school? Maybe it's just you, maybe 3 or 4 other teachers, and you seem to be the only one that appears to be motivated to develop your teaching. I know from first look, it might be that other teachers are not interested, but maybe, to be honest, they are struggling themselves outside of their work and their personal lives and just want people to understand their struggles.
Yes, that's true. And I guess that's why I got a very positive response from my colleagues when I started doing this in that school.
All right. Here come, we got some comments here. Mona in Tunisia says, I have 6 classes, 3 different levels, 180 students. That's a lot, Mona. That's a lot. Andres says 10 classes, 4 levels, 350 students.
I think
Andres is in Mexico, I believe.
Yes,
and that's what we want to hear. So right now, what we want to do, and Mona says, how many sessions does every class have a week? So how many times does the class meet? And I think Mona and Andres are speaking to this topic of the challenges of large classes. And when you say, oh, just go ahead and develop professionally, how do you do that with limited amount of time? Victor says, when I first started teaching, I was assigned 6 groups of about 40 something students. which is something normal in the public education system in Mexico. And then Victor says, Mona, in my school, there are 3 to 5 sessions per week. So here we are, Jorge. Now we're talking. Now these people are sharing. Okay, these are some very difficult challenges that we're facing with such large classes, finding the time to do things. And I think probably you and I would agree is number one is to validate the struggle that teachers have.
Yes, and as I told you, I found this very positive response from my colleagues, and I guess that's why they accepted my invitation because we have, I mean, some of them, like Victor, like Mona, like Andres, have this bunch of students and they don't know what to do about professional training. But helping each other, I guess, is the best way. I mean, we can start from there, helping each other, and then look for something else.
All right. And let's go ahead and now you mentioned at the beginning, you were working in a school, you started reaching out to the teachers in the school. And then you've also mentioned before, as we've talked about then reaching outside of your school to other schools in the area. Could you share how that could work in areas around the world where there are no special online classes that people are readily able to take, but they want to start local? Could you share that experience and then we'll expand it from there?
Yes, well, after a couple of years of experience I had in that school, I decided that I wanted to do more. So I volunteered myself to go to other schools to give some kind of presentation for teachers or for students. I remember I went to a public high school. This teacher asked me to go there to talk to her students about how important it is to learn this language, right? So I went there, I spent an hour with these students, and it was a wonderful time. So in some other places I went, I just called the principal or the coordinator, and I asked him or her for permission to go there and present something to my colleagues, our colleagues, right? And they accepted me. I don't know why, because I am not a teacher trainer, but as I told you, I guess I was lucky to find this positive response that they accepted me. So I went to several schools to give a presentation for other teachers, and they were, I mean, in my opinion, they were really satisfied and happy with what we shared in that time.
And I think probably knowing you, Jorge, as I do, having a certain demeanor, having a certain attitude toward others as if we don't want to present ourselves, well, I've been teaching for 35 years. I have the answer. And I think one of the things that we would both agree is even experienced teachers need to be open to new ideas, because really the mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. So I think probably why many people were listening to you was the idea of your attitude toward them. The way in which you engage them, I think, is really important.
Well, yes, because after me, I guess some other teachers have volunteered themselves to do something similar.
Right. And let's look at some other comments that are coming in. Nishimi says 5 sessions per group, 40 minutes each. Thank you for sharing that. And again, I believe that might be Tunisia. Nayeli from Mexico says, hello. Good morning, Nayeli. Amy says, I make sure I know my students' needs when it comes to what materials I'm going to use with my one-on-one learner, and it is effective. But in the public education in the Philippines, we follow what is in the curriculum given by the department. So those are one of those challenges. When I'm working privately, I can approach it one way. But when I'm working in an educational system in which the materials are defined and determined, it can be a different challenge. Elef from Tunisia, 6 classes, 2 levels, 150 students. You know what? I'm embarrassed to tell you how many students I have because I don't have those challenges. Mona says, hello. Margarita says, oh, hello to my brother Jorge. All right. And again, Mona says, this is great. Another Precious says, in the Philippines, one of the struggles here for students and teachers is we don't have enough classrooms and chairs. So we're not talking even about technology. We're just talking about having a chair for students to sit. thank you very much for sharing that, because that's what we're interested in hearing, is really difficult, challenging experiences. So basically, some teachers are conducting their lessons under the trees. Oh, wow. Mesa from the United Arab Emirates says 3 levels. Each level has 5 classes a week, and in each level, 19 students. That's wonderful. And Marcella says hello. So those are the things, I don't think I was thinking about talking about actual chairs, having chairs that are readily available, but that's certainly some of those challenges that we have. So, Jorge, you've talked so far a little bit about your own development as a teacher, your decision to get into teaching, how you started in your own local school and then started reaching out to other communities, which I think is probably what teachers may be able to do. But let's ask, and I'm interested in hearing from teachers out there, why do some teachers seem unmotivated? Now, I want to avoid simplistic reasons for this, but what could be some reasons when you're working in a school, there are 6 teachers, you seem to be the very motivated one, the others may be less motivated. What can be some of the reasons why teachers struggle themselves? And again, I want to avoid simplistic answers as well.
Well, I guess it all starts with attitude and the love you have for your profession, your job. I mean, teaching. See, as I told you, I guess I discovered I wanted to be a teacher, and that's what makes me feel motivated to continue to share. I remember one day I was a little bit sick, and I went to see my principal, my coordinator, and I told her, you know what, I feel really, really sick. And then she said, well, go home. And I said, well, I'm going to teach this last class and I'll go home. So I went to my classroom. And then when I was in class, my illness disappeared. So my class is like my medicine. Well, it was in that moment, right? So I guess when we are really committed to teaching, we find a way to feel motivated, either helping our students, helping other teachers, both, or some other things. I mean, that's what I think about this. Some teachers feel demotivated because I guess they need to find the real reason for teaching.
And I think those are really good ideas. And I also think sometimes there are deeper underlying reasons as well. Perhaps some struggle at home. Maybe something is going on in their lives that is impacting their own ability to teach. Certainly that can be one. Unsympathetic supervisors who are only pointing out, you need to do this, you need to use this, you need to use this technology. And I always believe that each one of us has an emotional bank account. So that and I know, Jorge, you play this role in your own institution where you're supervising other teachers. Other teachers are wondering, oh no, what is Jorge going to say today? And if we can constantly fill our teachers, our colleagues, making comments, supportive comments, praise, honest and sincere praise about the good things that they're doing in the classroom, they tend to blossom and grow. So certainly there can be many reasons.
Yeah.
Let's see what else is coming in right now in terms of comments. Again, Ana Maria is saying hello. Ana Maria, welcome from Mexico. Oh, teaching. Ana Maria says, teaching is my therapy. And that's one of the things. I think a lot of people just want to be validated for the struggles that they're going through. And as you mentioned, once they feel that validation, I think they blossom and grow as well. Mona from Tunisia says, sometimes we are really motivated and we want to make a change, but nobody gives us a hand. So again, maybe we really want to do this, but within our own schools, we feel alone because people don't seem to be reaching out. And there could be different reasons why they're doing that as well. Margarita says, this is great. Nayeli from Mexico says, I agree. When you love teaching, you will always have motivation to go on, even in a harsh environment. I think that can be really difficult. And then Victor from Mexico says, in the public school I work at, we were lucky enough to get some donations from other Mexican companies. He mentions one here. These donations have helped us with so many different necessities. Of course, the request for the specific donations must be student-centered. Well, let's go on now. Jorge, we've been talking, and again, thank you everyone for sharing. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other professional development that you've done since that time, your beginning stages as a teacher. So let's talk about some of the other professional development you have done and how these professional development activities can take place in other schools and other places around the world.
Okay. While doing all this, I was telling you about, I discovered that here in Mexico, we had a teachers association. We have a teachers association. I didn't know that in the beginning. So I realized that there was MEXTESOL. MEXTESOL is the Mexican Teachers Association, which is affiliated to TESOL. TESOL is the largest association in the world, I mean, regarding teachers. So there is MEXTESOL here in Mexico, this association. And in Tampico, back in 2007, more or less, a teacher, her name is Vicky, she started gathering teachers to start a chapter. A chapter is like a branch of the MEXTESOL national level, right? So we got together in a nice place and we decided to start the chapter in Tampico back in 2007, more or less. So since then, I have been, part of the association. And then, like 5, 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to take a role as a president in the association here in Tampico. So then I started doing some different things. For example, as you can see in some of these pictures, we went to visit schools to invite colleagues to join the association. Now, this was something, let's say, more formal for me, not only, calling supervisors or coordinators, asking them for permission to go there to present, but this time was inviting them to a formal association and to be part of this. So in this picture, in one of these pictures, as I told you, we are visiting a school. You can see familiar faces in there because you know those teachers. And in the other picture, it's one of the events we organized in a local school for teachers. As you can see, we had a good number of teachers. Tampico is not a big city, so most of the events were really successful for us.
Now, let me jump in here for a minute. One of the things that I want to point out is that I think teachers respond differently to professional development. And I'm sure you would agree, Jorge, professional development in many ways can be the problem if it is viewed as fixing teachers. In other words, sometimes people might approach it, well, you have these particular problems, go to, one of these meetings, it will fix some of the problems that you have in the classroom. We're not talking about that. We're talking, yes, all of us is trying to learn. We're trying to develop as teachers. And I think if people create that supportive environment that you're talking about, I think teachers can thrive. But I think we have to think teachers cannot be viewed as the problem. They have to be in a supportive environment where they can thrive and learn together.
Yes, in fact, they are part of the solution. That's why we invited them to share and to participate in these events. I mean, it was not only Jorge or the group of the committee presenting. We opened this to everyone, so you are welcome to come and share whatever you want to share. And of course, the other ones will be there to support you.
And I think a lot of people, and as we look at some of these pictures, you mentioned some of the activities, and there might be other teachers, and I'd like you to speak to these pictures as well. A lot of people said, I don't know how to present. I don't know how to engage. I don't know if I have anything to share that is relevant to those that are around me, people who have taught for 20 plus years. So if you could speak to some of the activities that you were doing and also speak to the teachers who are saying, I don't know to what degree I can contribute to such an organization in a local environment.
But I guess we all have something to share and something to say. We need to find what that is. For example, right now I'm sharing you just my experiences, what I have done, right? But I remember in one of the schools, what we used to do was to have a meeting at the end of the school year, and each teacher, well, we were volunteers, right? We were given 10 to 20 minutes to share the most successful activity we have had during the school year. So that's a way, it's short time. And since you conducted the activity in your class, you know how it works, and that is something you can share. And it's worth.
And I think this is great. You mentioned keeping it brief. I think many people could say, oh, 5 minutes. I don't have to give a 45-minute workshop. I can do 5 minutes. And I think when I've tried to do that within my own institute, people are sharing 5 minutes. Often people think, hey, they feel that I have something valuable to share. And I think that's really critical. You made a very important point. Keep it short, make it meaningful, encourage people to do that as well. Mm-hmm. And let's look at some of the other pictures. Describe some of the other activities that you've done.
Well, for example, as I told you, we help each other a lot here in our region. In one of these pictures, I am kind of opening this spelling bee contest in a public university. I was invited just to do that, to open the event, which was an honor for me, right? The other picture is a speaker who came from community college in Arizona. In MEXTESOL Tampico, what we do is the following. We invite some international speakers for our conference, and we also invite local speakers. We put them together in the event, right? So local speakers may feel and they know that they are as important as these international speakers. Then how do we do that? Well, we go to different places to ask for sponsorship. And in return, what we do is that we have this international speaker for the school, for some kind of exclusive presentation for their teachers, and then the following day for MEXTESOL, for the rest of the teachers.
And I think that's a real key point. I remember back in 2016, you invited me to come out to Tampico. I spoke there alongside other teachers that were presenting. And as you just emphasized, the local teachers are just as important, or maybe even more important than any international visitor, because they are on the ground. They see things day to day. And as you did, I visited that local school. I was able to watch a class, and that teacher seemed very comfortable with my presence. Certainly the idea of seeing international participants alongside local participants, I think, is a real key, whether you do that in an online conference or something that we did that you hosted back in 2016. That was wonderful.
Yes, you were one of our guests. I remember when you came to Tampico, we got this sponsorship from the American Embassy here in Mexico. See, that's what you need to do. You need to look for people or organizations who can help you. So they help us to fly you from Utah to Tampico, and then we did the rest. And I also remember that you went to visit this public elementary school, and they were really happy with your presence in there.
Yeah. And it was wonderful. And I tried to make that teacher very comfortable. You know, one of the things that I've always been impressed, no matter where I go, if your demeanor is such that you see yourselves on equal ground, that you're trying to learn from one another, that you feed, you know, intellectually, emotionally from one another in your growth as a teacher, that makes a huge difference. Let's see what other comments are coming in. Here is, this is a larger comment. I think this is going to cover our screen right here. But let me just go ahead and read this. She says, he says, Well, one of the reasons is a lot of teachers only took education course because they didn't know what course they would take when they were about to enter college. And in the Philippines, education course is one of the most affordable courses we can take. So after taking education course, whether they get different jobs or they don't have any passion in teaching. So it sounds like what courses are available can have an impact on what people are doing and taking. Esther says, that's a larger comment, but let me read this. No matter how tough it is at times, we teachers should always look for instances of continuous professional development. It might be sharing ideas and tips with other colleagues in our own institution. That's what you're talking about, Jorge. Esther is emphasizing the same thing. Attending webinars. There are a lot of these free nowadays. Right? Even listening to enriching talks like this one. Everything that puts us to encourage us to reflect about our own professional practice is a plus and makes a difference. Thanks for the enlightening exchange. Glad to be here. So thank you very much, Esther. And I think that's an idea of engaging, of seeing ourselves on equal footing, of saying, hey, as you just mentioned, Jorge, could you share an idea for 5 minutes? I think is really important. Tutor Joe says, greetings from Costa Rica. Welcome. Elif says from Tunisia, the conditions of teaching were very difficult before COVID-19. It has become more exhausting since the spread of the pandemic, and the lack of stability and security causes a lot of trouble, which reduces teaching efficiency. And what I want to do is I'm going to come back to that. Well, let me talk about that comment right now. One of the things, and maybe you can speak to this as well, Jorge, as I know that in Tunisia, they had recently a 4-day shutdown. Everyone was locked down, and then a 10-day break from school. So how can teachers in today's world stay connected when they can no longer go through the schools, they can no longer visit their students, they've taken a break? What ideas might you have? And I pose the same question to everyone out there. Again, developing as a professional in very difficult situations during the pandemic.
Well, yes, as you said, this is difficult because you cannot go to students' house. You cannot see them face to face on campus. So what I have been doing is offering, having a one-to-one video conference with my students in case they need some kind of extra help, or if in case they need some kind of support in a way from me as a teacher, but also as a person. That's something I have been doing. I guess our viewers can have some other ideas because it's difficult to do this in this time. You cannot go to
and I think one of the things that we're trying to do is, if I'm attending a broadcast like this, I would be asking, does Jorge and Randall really know my situation? Can they really validate the struggle that I'm experiencing? Or is it all talk? And some of the comments that are coming in right now, let's see here. Andre says, MEXTESOL is a very good option for professional development. It offers different types of webinars. And what I'll do after the broadcast, and I actually believe I have in the show notes a link to the Facebook page for MEXTESOL so people can actually see the types of engagement that you're doing. I think Esther says, I love the sessions, something that worked for me in Congress. They are short sessions in which teachers share good practices briefly. Having short sessions like these one in our institutions could be highly empowering for everyone. So having very short sessions, as you mentioned, Jorge, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, especially if teachers say, I have 350 students I'm worrying about. I don't have time to do professional development, but that short session I think is really important. Tutor Joe says the worst mistake we teachers have made about teaching online is that we did not make time to include a training program as well as regulations prior to any course addressed to parents, kids, students in general. Tutor Joe, an excellent comment. It was kind of like, we're so worried about our own classes that we thought, we need to have some protocols and advice for teachers and students. Do you have any thought on that, Jorge, about how to help parents become aware of the needs of our classes and their own children?
Well, this, what he mentions, is a good idea. The only disadvantage sometimes, not always, is that, well, at least here in Mexico, there are some parents who don't even have an email. That's a problem. But that's an excellent idea. I guess what school can do is just to invite parents to have a device, an email, and then organize these sessions to inform them about how the school is doing, what they can do for the children, in this time.
And I think it would be great to hear some ideas going back to Tutor Joe about how to, and this goes back to just connection with parents and students, different protocols and regulations. And certainly having those things in line could be something that we do as teachers, as part of teacher development, training teachers. Here are some good practices, best practices in working with parents and teachers. Mona says, I think that what can motivate and encourage teachers to be more ambitious is to recognize their hard work by their principals, schools, inspectors, and communities. All right. So people, again, Mona is from Tunisia. It's always nice to say to someone every once in a while, okay, give them praise for what they're doing. Not just simply saying, good job, but actually finding something meaningful and specific. And so, Jorge, I think you would agree that could be really important in your role. All right. Let me ask you just briefly, in your role, how do you actually give praise and support your own teachers in your own institution, which can be a motivational factor in them seeking out professional development?
Well, I guess we all have different ways to praise people, right? Well, in my case, what I usually do is like, most of the times they come to my office to look for help. And what I do is I just encourage them to find together the solution for any problem they may have. But also, when I see that they are doing something good, I send them, just a note, an email, or something. I remember this teacher who didn't miss any day during a month or two. I don't remember how long. And I sent her a mail telling her, oh, you know what? We are happy that you have been on time to all your classes. And then she replied to me and she said, Jorge, you know what? Nobody has ever told me something like this before. It was a simple note, like just recognizing that she was there on time, like for this long time. And I guess that's very simple. And people feel recognized as this teacher, for example.
Yeah. And I know if I were her principal and she came into my office, she had a concern about her classes and so forth. A lot of people just want to be seen and they want to be heard. They don't want you to fix the problem.
No.
They just want you to validate, listen. Because as I've said in other broadcasts, I think a lot of times in the struggles that we go through is listening, pure listening, not advice, allows people to empty their heart, to allow them to heal in any struggle they might have. So that was an excellent example, Jorge, of something very simple. Some other comments. Angelica says, I met you when you came to Tampico. I remember you said traditional teaching, that is a regular board and marker, will be as meaningful as the highest technology. Absolutely, Angelica. Thank you for reminding me of that. Because one of the things is that so often, less is more. So in that professional development, I know there are cases where you have a teacher, hi, everyone, I'm going to tell you how this technology works and the 22,475 features it has. And I only need a marker and a whiteboard and a good idea to keep my lesson going. All right. Thank you, Angelica. Ines says, Ines from last week. She says, hi, Randall. It was an honor to work with you last week. It was such a fruitful experience for me, for my students. And it was a wonderful experience as well. Tutor Joe says, how to use tools to be applied over the programs, including how to behave in class. Absolutely. just some basic training on how to work with students. And I'm not sure in Mexico, I don't want to say that, all of the students in Mexico behave and act the same way, come from the same backgrounds. But when you're dealing with students from around the world, a student from Tunisia, a student from Costa Rica and Mexico, then you might be juggling different behaviors and so forth as well. Those can be challenging. We have a lot of comments coming in. Ada says, either with the best technology or the simplest or most basic tools, we have to reach each student's way of learning and address that style. Find resources that can suit each one of them. Give them options to find their learning path. And this might be a perfect professional development training workshop where you talk about just different learning styles.
Ada is one of the persons who has always motivated me to continue on this.
Okay. And so that's excellent idea. And thank you for acknowledging Ada on that. Again, different learning styles. Again, very good online session. George, congratulations. Again, Mona says the same. And Wasil says from Tunisia, Wasila says, hi, Randall. Not all the students in Tunisia can afford to have smartphones or PCs. So online teaching would leave underprivileged students behind only if they have to access the internet arcade. We should think about learners who live in rural areas. And what is that like in Mexico, where you're balancing out, people who are living in urban areas with those students that are living in rural areas?
Randall, unfortunately, I know about places where children listen to their classes using these big speakers in town. I don't know if this exists in the US, but here in Mexico, in some small villages, they have these speakers where they announce any kind of important news. And this is the way some students are having classes. Some others are using WhatsApp. I mean, it's okay, but it's not the best.
Yeah. And that's one of the challenges, is that even with technologies in any type of professional development that we do, is trying to think about the situations in which our teachers and students find themselves, like Wasila mentioned from Tunisia. Elif says, unluckily, decision makers decided to make a lockdown in the last moment just a few days ago. Neither teachers nor students can expect what is coming. That's why we lose connection with our students. What makes things worse is the lack of training and resources. I think, you know what, Jorge, I think we need a whole broadcast. Yeah. And one of the things I think, and thank you everyone for sharing, and one of the things when I do a broadcast like this, someone posts a comment and then we end the broadcast and they say, oh, Randall didn't read my comment. I wanted him to hear. I wanted to be seen and heard. And I think that's what a lot of teachers want in professional development. Yeah. Simply that people are there, that listen to my feelings. Precious says, students have online classes since the pandemic started. Some teachers deliver student modules, and after a week, they pick up the modules, or the students turn in their modules to their schools. And because of these huge classes, teachers and students, even the parents are having a hard time. Everyone's having a hard time, I think, in these situations. Well, certainly, we've talked a lot of things, Jorge. We've talked about a little bit about Mexico, a little bit about your background as a teacher, talking a little bit about professional development, starting at a local level, I think, which is really important. And then maybe getting involved in teachers' organizations like MEXTESOL. So let me ask you and give you the final word. What do you think the future is for professional development? And any final comments you would have to share with teachers around the world? You've met a number of teachers in the broadcast with large classes. What final comments can you share with those watching today?
Well, about the future, I guess from now on, it's going to be, let's say, hybrid, half face-to-face, half like this, or maybe more like this. But this is okay. We can reach more people. See, right now we have this international audience, something I didn't have I mean, I haven't had here in Tampico because we are local, but that's fine. We can start local and go higher, right? Go broader. About the future and what was the other question? You
Yeah,
said the
just the
future, the
future.
final comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my final comments. Please volunteer yourselves to share with your colleagues. If you don't want to volunteer, well, be willing to listen to these other colleagues who volunteer to share and be, proactive, and things will become better when you share your experiences and more.
Yeah. And I think as we're talking, Ada mentions just thanking me for my webpage. And one of the things that we're talking about is
Yeah,
sharing. You just said share,
yeah,
share. Nayeli from Mexico says, thank you for your ideas. It's been really useful now that I'm working with a group of teachers as a coordinator.
there you
Nayeli,
go.
congratulations. And so again, thank you, Jorge, so much for being a part of the broadcast. I think we've heard a lot of voices from around the world. A lot of people are saying, please see me, please hear me, please validate the struggle that I have. And I think these online activities, as we're demonstrating today, Jorge, of connecting, of sharing, of seeing, of just being a part of a community like this really makes a difference. Jorge and I want to thank you. Thank you for joining the broadcast. Thank you for being a part and sharing your voices. I think, Jorge, both of us have really enjoyed
Yes.
hearing the voices. Again, from Mona is sharing from Tunisia, and again from Mexico. Thank you so much. And Jorge from Utah and from Tampico, Mexico, we certainly want to wish all of you a wonderful day and an even better tomorrow. Take care.